Hello, welcome to the show, welcome to the channel, welcome to the page. My name is Valkyria Varder. It's Valkyrie of the Veil. That's more of like the English version of it. Today is our weekly astrological update. This is technically, well, not technically, it is. This is season 2 of Astrology and Magic. And for those of you who are new here, hi, hey, hello, welcome. We are changing up the structure and the order of Astrology and Magic for this upcoming season. The previous season, I just did kind of random updates on important astrological events that were happening. I have since phased out personal sessions from the work structure that I have, and I'll be dedicating more time to our collective updates and our collective spaces. Thank goodness. It's been a shift, it's been a gift, it's been very, very good. So it is, for those of you who are wondering about bookings, they are closed, and I'm so sorry. I love you. Thank you so much for the support and thank you for being here. So hopefully these collective updates can bring you the clarity that you need. That's where we're at with that. Before we get into this week, just so that we know where we are at, I'm looking at October 2nd to October 10th and 11th-ish. We are going to have another update in a week or so. So that's kind of the update for the structure of the show as we are moving forward and growing together. There's going to be weekly updates based on the moon cycles and the moon structures, and that way we have the kind of like what is important going on. I'm restructuring a lot recently with other stuff too, and most of it is based on the moon cycles and structures, so shout out to that. There are going to be notes for this show, this episode. If you look down in the description, there will be notes on the blog there. If you came from the blog, then there you go. Now you know. Those are the notes for the show. Yeah. What else do we have as an update? My new book, Book of Spells 2, comes out on Halloween. Super excited for that. I don't have the pre-sale up yet, but I am starting to announce it because we're about a month out. So keep your eye out for that. I'm looking forward to it. Halloween is also a new moon this year, which is pretty good. We're not quite there yet, but I'm pretty excited for it, not gonna lie to you. It's gonna be pretty great. So there's that one we have coming up, and what else? Update, any other updates? I think that's pretty much it. If you want to get updates for the show and you want to have updates for the weekly astrological transits, if you sign up for the email at the blog, they'll go out every single week. But that's pretty much it. Those are the updates for now. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for the support. Let's see what's about to ground because we start off this cycle with an eclipse. We start off this cycle with an eclipse. We start off with the Libra eclipse that's happening October 2nd. Hi, hey, hello. This is a beginning via an ending. We had the lunar nodes shift into Libra and Aries in July of last year. We also had our first eclipse in Libra. Once that nodal shift happened, that happened in the previous October. We also had Venus retrograde last year, which Venus rules over Libra. So we've been doing like a lot of work on self-worth and the Venus structure of offerings and giving and receiving. And it's a lot. We've been doing a lot of work on that. Inner work on justice, external work on justice. A lot of this justice work has been, for me, very mother related. So if that is an aspect that fits into your life, also feminine related, womb related, mother related, motherhood related, and not to mention also we have the dark moon included in this, not to mention, but I will mention it, we have the dark moon included in this work, in this eclipse. So super mother related. The dark moon is literally the placement in our chart that shows us of the dark mother, and Cancer and the moon more about mother energy. Dark moon, that is the dark mother energy. So we have the dark mother, the dark moon, and the moon both in Libra with the south node. So it's like super mother related in how that fits into your journey. Motherhood is such a personal working, it's such a personal thing. So if there's anything about that comes through for you in this session that we are sitting in together, then let it be received how it needs to. Let's see what else we have going on. This eclipse is going to be ruled by a Venus in Scorpio. It's going to be Venus is about the offerings of giving and receiving, right? Scorpio is the death and the rebirth. So it's like, what did you let die over the previous several years, especially since the South Node exited Scorpio and then went into Libra? And the South Node, for those of you who don't know, is like, what are we really good at on the earth? The North Node is more about our purpose. That's way up high in the sky. That's hard to talk about. People might call us crazy for walking towards it. But the South Node is like, we're really good at this. We have this skill. We're able to articulate this skill. I'm good as a human with this sort of work. It becomes a lot easier. It's also like more of a safe space, which has really allowed us to alleviate a lot of the pressure that South Node in Scorpio brought through to us. So I think it's kind of like little ironic. It's a little ironic that Venus is ruled by Scorpio for this eclipse. It's like Scorpio and the not letting go energy. I'm also a Scorpio. I get it. Scorpio and the not letting go energy. Scorpio is like, no, we will have the rebirth. Like, we've been through the death energy. We've been through the power struggles. Now this is the rebirth. Have you let go of everything that you've needed to? Have you done the work that you've been needing to do? Have you really been balancing and doing everything that has been required of you? Because the new chapter is about to come through, and it's going to come through via an ending. Now, this ending is going to be a lot of really like saying goodbye to the previous version of you. This eclipse might make you cry. It's like the version of you who used to settle, the version of you who accepted less than what they were worth, the version of you who let people in their life who didn't really offer what you needed. It's a it'll be bittersweet is the sort of feeling that I have around this for some people. It's like, it will be bittersweet. For some of us, it's like, oh, I'm complete. I'm done. I don't have to go back there. Fantastic. That's wonderful. Fabulous. And for some people, it might be very emotionally, there might be a lot of emotions to process, especially if you have not been like keeping up on the shadow work, which no shame or shade to that. Sometimes we literally don't have time to because we're bound to other things in life. That's just what it is. So there could be this really deeply rooted space of just like emotional purging, or emotional stuff might be emerging, and that's going to need to be processed and let go of. We have kind of two sides of this eclipse, one of them being this very shadowed aspect where we are walking through those emotions and kind of sitting and processing them and understanding them and letting go of them and letting go of this old version of ourselves and being like, wow, I can't even believe I was that person, but now here we are. Look at all the work I've done to become who I am. And then once we get to that side of the eclipse, look at who I am, look at who I have become. That side of the eclipse is going to be more about not just the future, but there's a lot of words that will be spun around this. So let's talk about some of the magical structure of what this eclipse is offering to us. This eclipse is really a contractual obligation, whether we want it to be or not. We are not able to avoid being bound by contract during this eclipse. Now, what do I mean by a contract? We're signing up for something. This eclipse, we're signing up for something. We're signing up to be a new version of ourselves. We're signing up to receive what we want. We're signing up, and this is a contract that we're not going to be able to back out of. Once it leaves our lips, or we are thinking about it and we're like really processing it, if you are really, because Mercury is going to be in conjunct with the dark moon for this eclipse. So anything that leaves our lips, that's ruled by Scorpio. Anything that leaves our lips is going to be bound in the shadow, where other people are not able to see it, where other people are not able to agree or disagree with it, where other people are not able to sit and manipulate it. It's going to be for you, by you, with you, only you, which I'm very grateful for that, because I know for me there's been so many removals of different contracts over the previous months since Pluto has gone retrograde, of other people I was involved with, or just like things I needed to go back and learn from. So now that work is really done for the most part, we do have Pluto going direct in a little over a week. It's not included in this weekly update, but it will be coming soon, which I'm pretty stoked for that. It's gonna be pretty interesting, in my opinion. I'm looking forward to bringing that update for you. But for now, we're here. Make sure, especially if you're unfamiliar with contracts, spiritual contracts, like the bindings of spell work too, like speaking something over yourself or speaking something over your fates, speaking something over your future. If you're more of a new practitioner and you're unfamiliar with that process, be just aware that anything that you decide to bind on this night you're not going to be able to get out of it. This is a contract where it's like, okay, well, you're the one who said it, so we're going to have to go through with it now. So if there's anything in your gut or in your head or in your heart where you're like, I don't know about this, dude, I don't know, like, I know that you want this, but I'm kind of unsure about it. This is not a contract to be unsure of. This is not a contract that you're going to be able to like return to and like edit. That once this eclipse passes, we're done pretty much. We have a new moon in Scorpio on Halloween, so there are going to be some like additions. It's going to look a little bit different then. This is like the binding of the contract, and then the contract is going to be quote unquote begin when we get to that new moon in Scorpio, even though it's already started. You know, like it's like you get hired for the job, but you don't actually start until this date. That's going to be more about Scorpio season and the new moon in Scorpio. But this one is, we're binding it up. So I would recommend kind of like sitting away from the influence of other people if you're able to. And if you are bringing in the influence of other people, being really specific about why and who and where and when and what. Because anything that is bound on this night, this is like moving forward as a mass, like just as the people on Earth. What's bound on this night contractually, whether that be just as a human or like specifically within a magic practice, then that's carried with us. And so anyone that you are meeting, anyone that you are like greeting or looking at binding contracts with, entering into relationships with, whether that's intimate, business, personal in the future, the stuff that happens on this night is going to be in the background of what they're carrying with them. It could be something that they want 5 years from now. You haven't gotten to that 5-year mark yet, but you and that other person have then just in the shadows, if you're going to be entering a sort of friendship, relationship, business partnership, however that might work, you are now bound together within those different determinations of the future. It's a night to bind your fate if that's something that you're interested in. What else do we have up here for this one? We're also ending a rebindings of contracts for ancestral and spiritual matters, and the beginning of that too. So while you're thinking about yourself and the centering of self through this, and what contracts are you getting out of? What contracts do you want to bind for your future? This is also a time where we have the ability to kind of unalign ourselves with some of the things that our family has inherited, both spiritually or the spiritual contracts that we've been signed up for probably generations. With the planets and the transits that we have going on right now, this is a big alleviation. For some people, this is a time of grievance and grieving of we were not able, maybe it's a structure or an inheritance that you wanted to keep up in your family and it just was not able to be that. And so there could be the grieving of that throughout this period and throughout this time. There could also be the realization of the gifts that you have inherited from the ancestral lineage you come from, and realizing like, wow, I'm very fortunate and very lucky to have been able to sit and study this, or to be able to inherit these gifts, to be able to inherit this power, to be able to, however that might show up for you, the inheritance from them. This is also a time whether we wanted to receive that inheritance or not. This is a time where we're kind of forced to look at that and unbind ourselves from it. And if you have not yet been made aware of that contract in the ancestral spaces, then it's probably going to be sticking around for a while, whether that be good or bad. Luck, I've been saying it on and off for the season, luck is neutral. So how you play the cards that you are dealt has a lot to do with the luck that we have in this life. Although there are some things that are not avoidable, and that is part of the truth that we're sitting in during this eclipse. So with the unbindings of those spiritual ancestral contracts, we're also signing up our ancestral lineage for new contracts that will be lasting for a very long time. Pluto right now in Capricorn, it'll be another like 220 years until Pluto gets back into Capricorn again, and that is the contractual bindings that we're not able to escape from. When Pluto's in Capricorn, that's what happens. We're bound to ancestral contracts, and we unbind ourselves from ancestral contracts, and then every 220 to 248 years, we go through another cycle of it ancestrally, intergenerationally. So if you find yourself looking at, I know a lot of the sessions I've been doing recently, it's like, I'm not talking to my family anymore. I'm not like willing to open that door anymore. I've changed my relationships. I've changed my family structure. Or like there's a lot of people who've been going through different divorces or just restructuring. It's been a lot. Okay. It's been a lot. So if you're feeling that it's been a lot of energy, looking forward into the future of like the next 20 years for yourself, which is a long time. Okay. But that is kind of what we're asked to do within this space right now. Looking that far ahead, like what is it that you really are asking for? What on that ancestral, spiritual, contractual binding sort of space, what is it that you want? What is it that you want for your family? What is it that you want to be able to leave behind? Is there a legacy you want to leave behind? Is there a system, a structure that you want to be able to leave behind? What is it that you're looking at offering to the people who are after you, whether you have children or not, because there's going to be probably people on the earth when you go. So even if it's not like your ancestral lineage specifically, but the people who are here, what is it that you want to offer to them when death comes to collect you? Like, what will be your offerings from death to other people? This is also, too, a time of Scorpio. Sometimes has a lot to do with collection of taxes. So it's like the little details that you might not think about, but we got to go back and like bring them through kind of thing. This is also a time with the energy that we're under where we are collecting those taxes on spiritual inheritance. I've been having a lot of conversations with my ancestors recently. Oh, we're not doing that anymore. Nope, we're closing the door on that. Oh, I'm not doing that anymore. We're closing the door on that. Oh, but we are going to do this. I'm not doing this anymore, but we are going to do this. I'm not doing this anymore, but we are going to do this. So I've been in the process of those unbindings and rebindings currently. That is it is true, and it is work. And the other thing I've been saying about this season also is that the work works. If there's one thing that I know for sure, is that the work works most of the time, as long as you're in the right environment and like you have the structure that you need. So that is true. What else do we have going on with this? This is also a time that you want to be really specific. So let's get into like some examples of those spiritual bindings and like what that could look like. Again, more on like a magical level term. Be so specific. Be so for real. Be so specific. Capricorn, Saturn. We have a weird circle structure going on with this eclipse. Okay, the eclipse is in Libra. Let's talk about the rulers of this eclipse. We gotta love the rulers and the hierarchies. Let's talk about those for this eclipse. The eclipse itself is in Libra. All right. Venus rules over Libra. Venus right now is in Scorpio. What are the rulers of Scorpio? Pluto and Mars. First, let's talk about Mars. Mars is in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. So it's just going to go back to the eclipse energy where the moon is in Libra. So we have this really, it's going to amplify. It's going to amplify that trajectory and also prioritization of that Libra space. It's going to prioritize the balance. It's going to prioritize also like the speaking of contracts in the dark moon essence, and being able to relate to the deepest, darkest parts of ourselves. This is going to be a very, 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 very extra, very, very, very shadowed day. If you think about the dark moon in the placement of an eclipse, a solar eclipse specifically, which is what this is. Solar eclipse is when the moon passes in between the sun and the earth. And so you have this when I figured this out months ago, it blew my mind. This is crazy. So if you think about the sun, all right, and then the moon passes in the middle of it, what are you staring at in that moment? Literally the dark side of the moon, okay? Since you're staring at the dark side of the moon, it's like a reversal, because what would normally be considered the dark side of the moon in like a full illumination is now fully illuminated by the sun. But on that front side, where we see the moon is now the dark moon. It's now the dark side of the moon. And so with this eclipse being like having the dark moon conjunct in that, the dark side of that moon that is facing us is going to be like triple down amplified. Normally that is not, we don't always have the dark moon conjunct with what's going on with the eclipses, but this is like we're really in the shadow spaces. We're creating shadows specifically, intentionally, so that we can go in there. One of the things I wrote recently in my blog is that there's not always a light at the end of the tunnel. There's many other ways to navigate the shadows. It's not always a light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes you have to walk around and find a light switch. Sometimes you have to just sit in the shadow until the sun comes up. Sometimes you have to be there's so many different ways. I don't want to get into like a whole bunch of specifics, but there's so many different ways to navigate the shadow. It's not always a light at the end of the tunnel. And so sometimes you are the light in the darkness. Also true. So however it is that you are deciding for yourself to navigate through the shadows of this eclipse, understand that the decision of that navigation is probably going to be the way that you're navigating for the next many, many years to come. So also pay attention to what that navigation looks like. I always recommend to, when people ask me for like, how do I learn about astrology or just like general stuff like that, the first thing I always say is, what's your form of learning? How do you learn? And then go look up the information. And similarly with this eclipse, how are you navigating in the shadows? There's so many different ways to do that. If you know how you're navigating in the shadows and you're aware of it, that's going to be a tool that you're going to be able to, you're going to probably need to pull out of your tool belt, but it's going to be like necessary over the next several years at least. But pulling that out of your toolbox so that you remember, how are you navigating? It's like we're gaining like a compass or like a directional tool for ourselves through this eclipse. Including how we're binding. What are we binding? What are we signing up for? What do we want? What direction are we going in? What are we asking for? And this is why be specific, because if you are with the way that so we did okay, go back now. We're going to track back. The ruler of the eclipse, Venus and Scorpio. So we looked at the Mars part, amplification, right? Let's look at the other side. Let's look at, this is the side where I'm like, oh, really? Oh, really? Really? Okay. Because the other side, Venus being in Scorpio, the other ruler of Scorpio is Pluto. Pluto right now is in Capricorn. Capricorn is about the intergenerational systems that we cannot escape from. It's pretty harsh, okay? It's about hierarchies. It's about like working really hard and building systems, and it's ruled by Saturn. Saturn is also the god of time, planet of time. So if you look at Saturn right now, Saturn is in Pisces, and Pisces does not like to be structured. It does not like to be rigid. It does not like to sit within hierarchical spaces. Pisces is like, let me be free. We are the totality. We are everything and nothing at the same time. Pisces is the veil that sits in between Scorpio. So you're going through the death and the rebirth. In the middle of that death and rebirth, you have Piscean veiled energy. So the fact that we have a Saturn in Pisces currently that's ruling over those intergenerational structures and systems and hierarchies that we're not able to escape from, there's probably going to be some things from those shadowed, veiled places that either have a hierarchy over you or you are a hierarchy over them. It's also like, what contracts within the spirit did your ancestors sign up for? And Neptune, which rules Pisces, is also in Pisces currently. So we have like a double down on the Piscean energy. Check out where Pisces is in your chart, because that's going to be the undercurrent by several layers. Talk about veils, several veils for this eclipse. It's going to be, just make sure that you're specific when things leave your lips, because this is a night where we're able to conjure a future for ourselves via communication and spoken language. The silent meditation will be very beneficial on this night if you are not sure of what is wrong or right for your decisions of the future. That is also true. And the reason to be specific is because if you think about the different layers that I just spoke about, the Neptune being in Pisces, ruling over that Saturn in Pisces, which is ruling over Pluto and Capricorn, ruling over partially, because there is Mars too, but partially the Venus and Scorpio. And then you also have that ruling over the eclipse itself. There's a lot of layers to that, okay? Each one of those being a different level of hierarchy, Saturn, each of those being a different level of veiling, okay, the Neptune and Piscean energy. And Pisces is a shapeshifter. Pisces is a trickster. If you're going to get tricked out of stuff, it's usually in the 8th house or the 12th house, which is Scorpio and Pisces energy. Be so specific, because once it leaves, it's got to go through 4 different layers of like traveling to get to the eclipse itself from that Saturn and Neptune and Pisces. The more specific you are, just don't leave it ajar, okay? Don't leave room for interpretation, because if you leave room for interpretation, there are spirits around who are going to pick it up and be like, oh, you want this? Well, we know you don't want exactly that, so we're going to give you this other thing instead, but it's still going to be within the contract. This is a tricky contract time. These are spiritual contracts. These are contracts of like, we're sitting in the spirit speaking about these things, and the spirit is not always so clear. So make sure that you are as clear as can be with yourself. And I'll leave it be at that. I laugh about it now, but it's for real so serious. Let's look at some examples of speaking these bindings. First, look at what do you want? Is it an experience, a receiving, an offering, an opportunity? Are you looking at like how much time is it going to take? Also, really look at like the definition of what is the thing that you want to receive, because we're talking about Venus, so it's the giving and the receiving. Look at those specifics. What do you want to receive? Be so specific about that. And then what are you willing to have leave? Pisces is also about the transition, and having Saturn in Pisces, explaining those layers again, right? It's about transition. What are you willing to leave? Everything costs something. So what you're signing up for within these contracts is going to cost something. If you're not willing to pay a price, you got to let them know. If you're not willing to pay something, you have to let them know. Or I'm only willing to pay this thing over here. I'm only willing to do this. This is the path that I am taking, and this is what I expect in return. You need to be specific on both sides, because if you're specific and you're like, this is what I really want, this is what I really am asking for, and you're like super specific, and there's like subsections into your definitions, okay? You're super specific, but you're not specific on what you're going to give. Well, you may be asked to give more than you were signing up for, more than you thought. So just make sure that on both sides, the giving and the receiving, that there's like a super specific definition for that. Also, be really specific of how you want the contract itself to be bound. Do you want it to be bound in love? Do you want it to be bound? What energy do you want it to be bound in? And then make sure, because it's Scorpio, so we have to conjure, and Mars in Cancer too, the activation of emotion, like being able to activate those emotions for ourselves. Make sure that you're able to really bring to the forefront, like create the emotion for yourself. Do you need to listen to music that puts you in that emotion before you do the work? Make sure that you're really like being very active about the different emotions. If you find yourself in fear, or you find yourself in doubt, or you find yourself in shame, or there's emotions that you're sitting in that maybe you're not even able to name them, this is not a night where, unless you wanted to bind into these contracts, that you want to get rid of those or have healthier relationships with them, because we're humans, we can't really get rid of those emotions necessarily, but we can create a healthy relationship with them so that we're able to move forward and not be brought down by them. That's true. So if you want that to be included in your work moving forward, definitely like be specific about that. But if not, and you feel like you have a pretty healthy relationship with those emotions already, for me, what I've been doing recently, especially since Mars entered Cancer, has been very much, I don't have time for this emotion right now. Listen, I love you. Sometimes I have to sit with it, but so discernment between the two of them. Sometimes I have to sit with it. Sometimes I do not. Sometimes it is, okay, that's it. I'm done. That we're finished now. I need to move on. So I'm going to go and pick myself up and go in this other direction. That's very much Mars in Cancer. Sometimes our emotions can become an enemy, which is very strange, but just making sure that if you need to activate that rearrange, it takes a lot of courage and bravery to do that in some situations. So make sure that you are making room to validate the fact that you are being brave and courageous if that's something that you're doing. I've been working with bravery and courage recently a lot, because it takes, the way that I've been working with it, let's break that down. We're going to go into a little subsection of the podcast episode. Yes. The way that I've been working with bravery and courage is that it takes bravery to get over the negative emotion. You have to be brave to go past that. And then if you continue, that's courage. So courage is the path of bravery. Courage is the path of bravery. So if you can become brave, I'm not going to sit in this, actually. You know what? I am brave. I am going to do this. I am going to offer love to myself. I am going to create this space that I've been asking for. Oh my gosh, now I am encouraged. I have the courage, and I will continue to be encouraged as I walk forward, because I have created a space where I can be brave. That's how I've been working with it. beautiful, beautiful. It's been really helping me a lot to be able to like articulate that sort of emotional space, especially after taking so much time in the previous years to really like get used to being in a relationship with fear, shame, doubt, and like some other emotions too. And now courage and bravery have been coming to the surface of like, how do I get beyond those things now that I have healthy relationships with them and like I don't need to sit with them all the time? Courage. It takes courage and also bravery. So activate the bravery, you'll be able to walk in courage and be encouraged by yourself and the emotions that you have around you. That is very true. That is very true. So looking at how you want those contracts to be bound is super important, and make sure that you're sitting in the activation of the emotions. And then because the Mercury involvement in this is also a time for speaking. Like if you were to, maybe you're doing candle work or you're doing like some sort of actual physical work that is connected to this eclipse, make sure that you are speaking really specifically. We've been over that, okay? And also, you can't like speak. One of the ways that I have a Mercury in Scorpio, so I'm pretty familiar with that Mercury Scorpionic sort of energy. I don't always know what's about to come out of my mouth. I don't. That's why I have my notes here and like they guide me. Great. But I don't know most of the time with that Mercury in Scorpio. And this Mercury is in Libra, but it's going to be influenced by that Venus in Scorpio. So make sure that you are trusting in yourself, making room and space. And the way that I do this is just to embrace the space and speak. I'll speak on it and speak on it and speak on it in the emotion and in that flow that I'm in until I can feel that there's no more. Until like I'm like, okay, yeah, the well is empty. I brought everything up that I have needed to. I have learned that if I leave anything hidden, then I don't get the full final result that I want. So make sure that that's how my magic works for this, because I'm also thinking about people who have like spells and books and are like super specific like that. Also true for that. So discernment, just make sure you get it. Just make sure you get it all out is really what I mean to say with that. Like make sure the words are like for sure. So that's more of like an example of how to break down that structure and again, be so very specific. I've also included in the blog a snapshot of when different planets are going to return to the exact degree in Libra of this eclipse. So if you want to check that out, it's like extra tidbit of information. I'm not going to speak all of those here, but if you're interested in it and you're curious about when those planets might cross over for you, and how they align with your chart, this is like so extracurricular. If you want the homework, it's there. But if not, I'm definitely not going to judge you for it because there's a whole bunch of extra information, but it's there for reference if you need it. So the only one that's not included is Pluto, but that one's like a super generational planet, and probably most of us are not going to be alive when it passes over this eclipse degree. So, it is what it is. All right, moving on. So that's October 2nd. That's when that eclipse is. October 2nd. October 3rd, basically everything is the same except for the eclipse is done. So just make sure that you make time to be in the flow and do what you need to do on October 3rd. Also, October 2 is the eclipse, but it takes place, it's like later in the evening, I'm pretty sure. So just make sure that October 3rd, you like anything that could have been unheard on October 2, you're getting that out. This is a day to still work the magic that you're in, to keep speaking, keep talking about it. This is still a day of activation. Even though the eclipse is over and like we have gone through the eclipse itself, still a new moon. We're still in the new moon energy. We're still in the activation energy. We're still in that Libra sort of space. This is also probably going to be a day where there's either going to be consecrations of finalizations or consecration of activations. And honestly, it could be both, where we're done, where we have the finalization, we've finalized it, and the consecrations of activations of, I understand now, like there's more of an understanding on this day. Even if there's still some things to say, like there could still be some words where you can feel it or you're not able to articulate it, but it's still around you or there. Things will become more clear as we go on into the next season. So just, make notes for yourself as necessary. October 4th through the 7th, we have the moon moving into Scorpio. This one is going to be pretty interesting because we still have Venus in Scorpio. We have the new moon in Scorpio coming up. And Scorpio energy, since it was the undercurrent ruler of the eclipse, and our south node was just in Scorpio, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of really big truths that come up during this moon. And we've had a lot of really big truths coming up generally speaking, this has been like a season of truth. What's your truth? What's their truth? Looking at the truth. This has been a really large season of truth and like honoring that truth. Are you honoring the truth? Are you capable of doing that? Have you been sitting with the truth? There's all those questions to sit with. And how have you been doing that is also important. That's also true. Yeah. So this is going to be, this moon will bring out some truth. This is also going to be a moon to start to activate, however that looks for you. If you have done activation work within that eclipse, or there were things activated for you, probably then this moon, there's going to be relief from grief for some people during this moon. There could be some grief for others that come up. Again, just depends on the work that you've been doing. But death will more than likely be a visitor on this day, not in the sense of like they're coming to get you, not like that, but in the sense of death as a spirit comes to guide us when it's necessary. And so we may have the perspective of why we have been guided through the losses and griefs of previous years on this moon, and just having more peace and acceptance about that. And if that for you is already done, because sometimes we're different people with different practices. So if you find yourself already done with like the grief work and the letting go work, then this moon in Scorpio will definitely be death coming through to be like, oh, and also here are the offerings of life. Here are the offerings of life that we bring to you because of the death work that you have been doing. Here are the offerings of life that we bring to you because of the death work that the ancestors have been doing. Here's the offerings of life because of this is what you have earned. This is a big season of you are only able to receive it if you have earned it. So on that, it will be what has death. Even if you don't sit in the full receiving of it on that day, because the first quarter moon is going to have a lot to say too in this cycle, and we have a new moon in Scorpio and Scorpio season coming up. So even if it's not the full receiving, there will be some sort of indication of these are the offerings. Here's your start. Here's your start. Open the heart. Here's your start. So that's October 4th to the 7th. And then we have October 7th through the 9th. The moon is moving into Sagittarius. Sagittarius, I have been, okay, not we, but me. I have been so focused on Scorpio, Libra energy. It's been so forefront. Okay, we've been going through all these ancestral inheritances, contracts, spiritual practices, contracts. There's been a lot of that recently. We haven't really had the room to look at Jupiter or Sagittarius energy in the recent months. It hasn't been at the forefront. It hasn't been a ruler of the chart. But starting very soon, we're going to be in more Sagittarius Jupiter energy. Personally, I love it. Sagittarius Jupiter energy, that's true. And also, it's going to be a little bit different than maybe we expect. Normally, Jupiter comes in and is like, here's good luck. Here's good luck, and here's all the lucky stuff, and here's the expansions and all of that. It's going to be a little bit different this season. So a different reason for every season. Going to be a little bit different this season. Let's talk about it. So we have the moon in Sagittarius, October 7th through the 9th. This is right before Jupiter goes retrograde. Jupiter goes retrograde October 9th, but the moon will be in Capricorn at the point that it does go retrograde. So just like for very specifics, because it would be very different if it was in Sagittarius when it went retrograde. This moon in Sagittarius it's gonna be like a slingshot. This retrograde for Jupiter in Gemini, it's gonna be like a slingshot in the sense of like we had to walk up to this point of precipice in the Jupiter energy. We had to walk up to this point. We've been moving forward, and we've come to this point, and we're about to turn around and have a slingshot. Is that a slingshot? Boomerang. Not a slingshot, a boomerang, pardon me, is a boomerang. And it's gonna be shot off into the past. And we're gonna circle back around, for sure. We're gonna circle back around. It's gonna circle, and then we get to our landing point again. But the point where we stop walking and we shoot the boomerang is we're about to arrive there, and that is in this moon of October 4th through the 7th. So note for yourself where Jupiter is in your chart, Sagittarius is in your chart, and how also if you have Gemini placements, because Jupiter is in Gemini right now, so that's going to be important as well. And just kind of notice how you've been interacting with Jupiter energy, expansion energy, good luck energy. How have you been bringing information through in the previous couple of months, and what does that look like for you? Because we're about to go through a lot of reconsideration with that. So this moon This moon is going to really allow us to, we're still facing forward during this moon. We haven't turned around to throw the boomerang yet. We're still facing forward. So we may not have a direction. We may not have a direction, which is going to feel kind of strange because it's Sagittarius, and Sagittarius thrives in having direction and having aim. But the direction is that we're about to turn around. Like, that is the purpose of us getting to this point. We're about to turn around and we're about to have this boomerang sort of slingshot pull back moment. It could be too, in another analogy or metaphorical sense, where we have to pull the bow during this Jupiter retrograde, because Sagittarius is the archer. So we have to pull the bowstring before we're able to take our shot. And so getting comfortable with that, taking our, and then once Jupiter goes direct again, and also during Sagittarius season, we'll be able to move forward a little bit in that Sagittarius energy and the Jupiter energy. But we've come to the point of we have to stop. We have to stop and walking. We have made it to a purpose, one of them that we've been walking in. And so there's going to be some clarity, illumination on that before we do have that retrograde come through. And then let us see, is there anything else in the notes for that I need to go over? The direction is about to change. Specifically too, if you're looking at your body practices, this is one of the notes that I made. Our feet are about to be led by our lungs. Gemini rules the lungs, okay? Sagittarius rules our thighs. That's the expansion energy, rules our thighs. So our feet are about to be moved by our lungs. So if you are noticing, there could be some people who want to stop smoking, or you're clearing out your lungs, or you pick up smoking again. Anything that you bring into the lungs or are speaking through the lungs, okay? Any sort of connection with breath and lung stuff that you have going on during this Jupiter retrograde is going to move your feet. It's gonna move your feet. It's gonna change your seat. So if you're looking at walking in a different direction, bringing in air practice is going to be something that is very beneficial. Could be different smells around you. It could be incense burning. However you learn with the air and the lung energy applicable. It's gonna change your direction, however you interact with that. So be very mindful for yourself of what that looks like and where you are going. Yes, that's the other note that I hadn't put in yet. But let's talk about Jupiter retrograde in specifics. Jupiter is going to go retrograde October 9th at 19:05, which is 7:05 p.m. In UTC. So there's people who listen to this stuff from literally every single time zone, I'm pretty sure. Thank you so much. That is crazy. I didn't even think about that before I said it out loud. Let me not get too overwhelmed by that. Holy cow. So translate that time zone as you need to. Again, that's 7:05 p.m. UTC. And it's going to be retrograde until February 4th of 2025. So it's going to be retrograde for a while. We're going to be in the retrograde for a whole season pretty much. And we have our next eclipse season in March of next year, 2025. So we're basically, from now until our next eclipse season, we have a Jupiter retrograde, including the season that's ruled by Jupiter, Sagittarius. Gonna be a little weird. Gonna be a little weird. There may be some things that disappear. Again, Jupiter being the expansion energy, watch what you say, because some things might walk away. And if they walk away during the Jupiter retrograde, they might come back next year. Just watch what you say and watch what walks away. Watch what you say and watch what walks away. They go together. Do you want to make room also for things to come through? Watch what you say, watch what walks away. That's going to be a game to play during Jupiter retrograde. If you want to play a game, watch what you say and watch what walks away. You could also look at what words are bringing through an attraction, but it's going to be very focused on watch what you say and watch what walks away. You could say something and fear could walk away. Okay. You could say something and love might walk away. You could say something and trust might walk away. You could say something and there could be delusion that walks away. So it could go in any direction. That's part of Jupiter, is we go in any direction. What are you aiming at? What are you aiming for? So just be prepared for that. Probably more updates on Sagittarius Jupiter retrograde stuff as we get into closer to more planets being in Sagittarius, probably around Scorpio season time or in Scorpio season. But for now, that's what we got going on for that. And let me read this quick and see, because We're also being asked, that's true. That's true. Let's talk about it, because Mercury right now is in Libra, so we're also being asked to balance our expansion. Libra is, again, what the eclipse was in, curiously enough. So this Jupiter retrograde is like, we had the eclipse in Libra, and then immediately Jupiter and Venus like to balance each other. It's, if you look at like super traditional astrology, Jupiter is husband and Venus is wife energy. I read them more as the Venus is the giving and the receiving, and the Jupiter is what happens when it is given or received. Like, what do you do with it? And so if I offer something to you and then you sit and expand it, well, then you have just sat in your Jupiter energy and chosen a direction for that expansion, and then you could offer something in return. And then what would I do with it? That's a lot about that Jupiter-Venus sort of relationship. The giving and the receivings, that's Venus, and then what we do with it once it has been offered or received, that's going to be the Jupiter energy. So ruled by Mercury in Libra with the Jupiter during this like at the beginning of this retrograde. So we're going to have those contractual bindings on the night of the retrograde, or not the night of the retrograde, the night of the eclipse. We're going to have those contractual bindings, and then immediately we have Jupiter go retrograde, and it's like, did you really say what you meant? How can you work that in your favor? Do you mean what you say here? Can we get more specific about this? So instead of going into expansion energy and like making the contract bigger, we're going to go more into the details. I always find that Jupiter retrogrades are a safeguard. They're always protective if you let them be. It can be frustrating because if you have projects that you want to expand upon or you want to move in a certain direction, like you're not always able to do that. Jupiter retrogrades are more of a standstill. We have to be here. We have to re-inspect. We have to redirect. We kind of have to figure some things out. We might have to get rid of some stuff. We might have to rearrange the structure and the order. Jupiter is the son of Saturn. Okay, so when Jupiter retrogrades, we have to kind of like restructure some things sometimes. So it's going to be a moment within our space where instead of really sitting in the let's get bigger and go larger energy, we need to be even more specific. We need to get even more direct. We need to, especially it being eclipse season, like this target might be 3 to 5 years, 20 years, okay? It could be a long time from now. And it's gonna be, we have to be, if we're gonna be able to make a straight shot with Sagittarius Jupiter energy, we have to be so specific. So personally, I find that Jupiter retrogrades, they, again, like I said, it's a safeguard protective mechanism. If you find yourself getting frustrated because things are not expanding the way that you thought they were going to, make sure that you sit and re-inspect and redirect and like rework how you need to. Usually once you bring the energy of that restructure and reorder, as the lessons of Saturn being the father of Jupiter ask us to do. Once you do that, then normally there is some sort of expansion that comes through or good luck that comes through. It also depends on where Jupiter is in your chart for you. So go over that area, check it out, see how that Jupiter kind of interacts with you and what that could look like. Also true. This also is going to be this is going to be like a very, very cleansing retrograde, which I'm pretty excited for. Cleansing for our lungs, kind of I already went over that, but cleansing in the sense of like, if you're going to be taking a shot years into the future, do you want what is around you right now to expand? Is it dirty around you? Do you have a mess around you? Do you want that mess to? I don't want a mess to expand. So right now we're being asked to get really specific in like all the crevices and corners of our plans and in our strategies and in our life so that we don't expand into something that we don't actually want to become. This is like very much long-term for the future. Who are you gonna be? And look at the decisions that you've made so far very clearly to help you understand how are you going to create this new version of yourself. You've said goodbye. That's part of the eclipse. You've said goodbye to the old you. You've said goodbye to the version of you who was settling and was not receiving enough of what they were actually wanting. And now there's this version of you that you have like conjured up in your heart and your mind and your spirit. How are you going to get there? And being specific about that is like so very important. So this Jupiter retrograde, thank you, Jupiter, for having us rest for a moment instead of just immediately going straight into it. It's like, okay, you've made these contracts with yourself. Let's figure out how to do this wisely. Let's figure out how, because especially with the dark moon and Scorpio involved with this, some things come disguisedly. Some things are going to be very shadowed until they're not. And so making sure that we can be super, super specific is important for that. That is true. I will leave that up to discernment for you. Goodness gracious. And then the next moon phase that we have is October 9th through the 11th. We have a moon in Capricorn. It's our first quarter moon. For me, the way I work first quarter moons, and I do have a video up on my YouTube more about the moon cycles and moon magic. If you're curious and interested about that, I will link it in the description below. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll put it up in the corner for you. That is true. The first quarter moon is going to be more about the direction. This is how I sit with it. I don't really know what direction I'm going to be going in to reach my goal of the new moon, or like to reach that intention of the new moon. I don't know that until I get to the first quarter moon. And then when I get to the first quarter moon, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. This is where I've been walking. This is where I am going. And I can see my direction on the path more clearly, rather than just kind of walking blindly or having to guess with things. It becomes more even. It becomes more even. So we're gonna have more direction. This is also gonna be more direction because Moon is in Capricorn, Pluto is also gonna be in Capricorn. So we're going back and looking at our final, again, more of the contract stuff, like what direction are we really going in? And Pluto is not just about contracts, it's also about power. It's also about our power, your personal power. What is the power of you? What is the power that you're asking for? What are you willing to sit in for those exchanges? What are you exchanging within your power exchanges? We're also reminded too that sometimes contracts can be really good and sometimes they're not. Sometimes we sign up for contractual exchanges that are actually really beneficial for us. Sometimes we sign up for some that are just like, oh, well, I got a piece of garbage for gold. Like, I didn't want to do that. So part of the Pluto retrograde that we've been under has been helping us to understand what contracts are good and bad, and how do we sign good contracts, how do we sign up for the good stuff that we actually want, and how do we confront what we actually want, because Pluto has to also do with the hidden parts of ourselves. So this moon is going to help us understand, like, we're in this really, really dark space in that eclipse, and literally the sun is being eclipsed, so it's going to be extra dark. The dark moon is included, Scorpio is included. There's a lot that is alluded to, okay? A lot that we may not be able to speak directly at, even if we're being specific on that eclipse day. And even if you're doing your best, even if you are like on it, there's still going to be some stuff that is hidden. That's just the energy of it. And so this first quarter moon really brings through, like, oh, that's the details of this, and that's the details of this part of the contract, and that's the details of this part of the contract. This is how this ancestrally sets me up. This is how this within the spiritual structure and order of my practice sets me up. Okay, so we get like the sub clauses of the contract, or like the sub parts of however that works, okay? The subness, the like extra categories and the footnotes. We're doing some contract editing on this day, and it's not just about contract editing. This is also a day where you may figure out you have the upper hand in those contracts, or how do you have the upper hand in those contracts. If you are able to be relaxed through this, okay, there's probably going to be some pretty great information that comes to you when that moon in Capricorn is there, especially because we have Mars in Cancer right now. So lots of strategizing, because Mars in Cancer is going to be ruled by the moon as it moves. So when the moon is in Capricorn and we have Mars in Cancer, it's like, okay, what part of that contract takes priority, and how do we make sure is the priority, like, especially if it's a years-long contract, okay, years-long, priority here. What's number one priority? What's the second priority? Can we shift these around in different positions of priority, or does it have to be before, after, and then, you know, so on and so forth? So looking at that and getting really clear about that is going to be a part of this moon. It's very, very, very interesting. I wrote in my notes that I feel like I'll be crying over this moon a lot, because it's also Pluto's still retrograde. So we're also going to be looking back at the contract that we signed up for in like 2008, even if we didn't realize it. I was pretty young during 2008. All right. So like, I didn't know, but here I am. So what have you done with that? What have you done with the changes that have come since then? And also too, because Pluto does go direct October 12th, more information about that in the next update. But we are about to go into a Pluto direct. So this is like our final, this moon in Capricorn is the final, like, holy cannoli, I did it. Holy wow. Like the contract from 2008 when Pluto entered Capricorn, I nailed it. I got that. I did that. Oh, wow. So this is also a time to like take a bow for yourself. If you really have done the work and you have done what you have been asking of yourself, first and foremost, and what has been asked of you as you find that it has been necessary to do, then give yourself a congratulations, because I feel like there's probably going to be definitely more than one person this season who is deserving and has earned that. Because again, I'm going to go back to that. The season is a lot about what have you earned for yourself, and what have you turned into because of the cards that you were handed in 2008. This is also a changing of fates. Here we are, we're changing fates, and we don't necessarily have time anymore to debate that changing of fate. We've already been weaving it, we've been leaving it, we've been grieving it, we've been collecting it, we've been directing it, and fate has been watching over us, saying, oh, I see it. I see how you move there, and I see how you move there, and I see how you move there. Whether that's good or bad, fate, to me, I love fate. And also, fate is pretty neutral. Fate is a neutral being, and fate's gonna watch you and look at how you're doing stuff, and look at what you're doing, and look at when it's done, and fates get woven in that way on a more individual level. There's like grand fates of humanity, but that's a little bit different, in my opinion. Sometimes they definitely go together, but the small threads of one human life versus like everybody on the planet, definitely a different scale of things. But if you're looking at your personal life, in those weavings, fate is it's a reconsideration. The Wheel of Fortune is changing for basically everybody right now, and we're about to get dealt a new hand of cards for the next 20 years. Big time, big time. This is a large change. So I am filming this pre-eclipse. Whenever you're watching this, good luck to you, because we've been going through it. We've been going through big changes. We've been going through the seriousness. We're not going to really start to walk out of that for a while. Like the rest of this year is pretty serious, and like then part of the beginning of next year is pretty serious too, in a different way. We'll talk about that when we get there one day, but for now, yeah, we're in a pretty serious time. This is also a time where if you are keeping up on your spiritual practices, and I heard this on the internet from somebody else recently. I've been saying this for a while in my like personal sessions, and basically since Saturn entered Pisces, this is something that is like, whoop. If you're someone who spiritually practices right now and you are consistent with those practices, you pretty much have a leg up. You have a leg up. If you are someone who is consistent with spiritual practices, right now is your time. Right now is your time. Right now is the time for you to do what you need to do, and to have benefit come to you, and to have benefit come to your families, and to have benefit come to the people that you love, and where you want to put that benefit for you. Now is your time. It's your time. Now is your time. And Saturn will be retrograde back in Pisces. I don't know the exact dates, but through next year. We have new activations with Saturn. Like I said, we're going to talk about it when we get there, but there's some big stuff going on with new activations of spiritual order and structure next year. So this is a time where we are sitting in the alignment of like, we really did that. We really did that. Look at where you're at and get familiar with it, because there's about to be a lot more room for people who are spiritual practitioners. In the kindness, and be kind to yourself if you're blind. So I'll leave it there. Gratitude, reverence, and love to you. That is true. Gratitude, reverence, and love to the beings, the spirits, the creatures who have come through in love, truth, and free. Gratitude, reverence, and love if you are here to support me and the listeners. That is true. Gratitude, reverence, and love to you, the great being and the great mother and the great father and the great spirits of love, truth, and free. Gratitude, reverence, and love to your ancestry, and who are of love, truth, and free. Gratitude, reverence, and love to the indigenous spirits of this land and where the land is that you are on, who are of love, truth, and free. And gratitude, reverence, and love to you and to me. I'm grateful for me too. Gratitude, reverence, and love to both of us. Oh, so good. That was such a good session. It was delicious. Nutritious. Also too, we're in the balsamic moon right now as I'm filming this. Is that true? I'm pretty sure it is. And one of the things that people keep saying on TikTok when I talk about the balsamic moon is how great salad is. So I'll leave you with that little joke, that little haha, with all the serious stuff going on, little haha for the end of the episode today. So I will talk to you next time. This is the restructure, the reorder. So weekly updates. Here we go. Again, if you want updates on the show, blog updates is what it is, and I'll talk to you soon.